from the tribe of Judah, of the seed of Abraham. I ain't no Egyptian, I ain't no Muslim, I ain't no Kabbalist, and I definitely ain't no African. Why you all up in Islam? You ain't Arab, you're a Hebrew. Man, it's getting crazy everywhere I look. I see you. Some of y'all say you Egyptian, you can't read the hieroglyphics, you don't know what they really say. That makes you religious, cause you just believe in what you heard was right. So why you mad at me for saying I'm an Israelite?
Welcome. We're in the studio again with Master Kupi. He's back with his 23andMe results.
That's right. So we're about to follow up with the information and the genealogical as well as DNA research.
Mr. Kupi, can you please share your experience with 23andMe and why you would recommend others to use this DNA research?
Well, let's start by saying I am very satisfied with my results. I am even more impressed with the time of delivery in which I received my results. So I have to point out that 23andMe company is on it. So the turnaround date is it's on point.
Can you share some of your information with us, such as the global similarities?
Well, here I have my global similarity. I noticed that there's no part of Africa, even the north, that I'm not connected to. Okay.
Interesting.
What's interesting about that actually is each part of the continent has high signatures. Now, usually people associate those who came across in the Middle Passage not having a connection to ancient Egypt or the land of Punt or Canaan or whatever have you for different reasons that have occurred over time. But what we have to understand genetically and historically, that's incorrect. I have the connection with North Africa just as much as I have it with East, just as much as I have it with the South, the West, or the Central, which we'll be delving into a little bit later in the conversation. I also, very interestingly, have Oceanian in me. You know, that was the next highest signature behind those five that I mentioned. What Oceanian is like Australian, Hawaiian, all the Pacific Island groups. You know them today maybe as Filipino, Tagalog, and so much more. Behind that comes the Near Easterners. This category withholds Palestinians, Israeli type Jews, and other people in the Western Asian category. Behind that, right behind that, is Central Asia. Now, if you understand Central Asia, like the parts of China and also Eastern Asia, which is your Japan as well, which I also find that a lot of other of my DNA carrier traits and signatures are very Asian. So behind that comes Siberian. Now, I'm pretty sure you're wondering, well, what's that? Well, Siberian, unlike the dog, traveled over the land bridge that they call the Strait, and when it crossed over, they came into the Americas and later became the Native Americans. But first, they started off as the Eskimos. So I have that in me, which would explain the Native American percentage. Behind that comes Southern European, which I'm pretty sure many of you are familiar with. If not, that's Italy, you know, France, Spain, so much more. You know, Sardinia, the Basque, all of that. North America, which again, you have your Choctaw, your Seminole, your Sioux, everything that falls in the American territories pre-colonial. South America, which is your native Brazilian Indian populations, the ones of you know, Venezuela, Colombia, and so forth. Behind that, and last of all, is Northern Europe, which you should know as Sweden, Germany, and Norway.
It would appear that you have a large range. Do you mind giving us the percentage?
Well, this is actually interesting. 23andMe's database is based off of their studies back in 2008. That's when it was last updated. Now, what they do is they take all of those groups and they put them into categorical breakdowns of main racial groups that they consider to be the original racial groups for certain continents. Looking at those continents, we have Africa, Europe, and Asia. My African percentage is very interesting. Most people ask me, well, what are you mixed with most of the time? Well, I have to be honest with you now. I'm 87% African. So that's pretty pure in my book. Europe, I'm 10%. So if there's a chance of French, just a little bit. Asia, now that's 3%. Now people usually have a hard time with accepting the fact that their Asian percentage is low, since Native American is put under that category. What we have to understand is, in ancient times, the original Native Americans who came over on that land bridge were genetically no different from the Africans in Africa, like the Aboriginal Australians are no different from Africans today, other than their specific DNA sequence that marks them ethnically different. Other than being ethnically different, they're all the same as in original origin. So when you try to separate your African ancestry and your Native American ancestry, it's impossible genetically and culturally. Because if we look at such films as Avatar, we can see the similarities that James Cameron used between the Native American and African aspects. Moving on though, into global similarity and things like that, like I said, it's far more complex than social opinion. So again, if you get a low Asian percentage, that doesn't mean you don't have Native American in you. It just means that it's been, as America's become more and more diverse, it's being, I wouldn't say watered down, but doubled and quadrupled on top of by other mixtures.
I understand that 23andMe offers the paternal and maternal haplogroups. Can you please tell us what yours is and explain for our audience exactly what the haplogroups are, what it represents?
Okay, that's actually a good question, because haplogroups are the origination of a specific migration that took place out of Africa. Now, the first migrational group that came out of Africa, like I mentioned, were the Oceanians. Today, the Aborigines, Australians, the original Hawaiians, and so forth of those Pacific Islands who have those, still have those African features. But if you look at their hair textures, you wouldn't consider them African, which is why we have to understand the original diversity of the world. Okay, for example, my maternal haplogroup is L3F1B1. Now, that haplogroup, as it says here, originated less than 50,000 years ago. Now, what we have to understand is that's a subgroup of L3. L3 can be found today in some Ethiopians of the Oromo tribe and other parts of the Sudan, as well as the Nile. Okay, so that shows you right there was a migration from the original Egyptian civilization. Now, as it says, we migrated and we became the Yoruba and Fulani peoples. Now, Fulanis can be found all over the continent, which is another reason why we've always been genetically diverse, obviously. So mixture isn't something new in our family. Now, what's interesting about the Yoruba tribe is it's been proven that the Yoruba have had Hebrewisms or Hebrew traditions that came out of Egypt since the time of Moses. Again, they were a branch that broke off and went into Western Africa by migration. And today you still have Yoruba Judaism practices, such as the circumcision and so forth. Now, what's also interesting about that, it tells you more This site tells you more about your migration and how all of that works. As far as my paternal haplogroup, I'm E1B1A. Now, this is a lot more complex, but not totally misleading. What's interesting about this haplogroup is it's also a subgroup of E, but it's quite different than the first one I described. It originated 20,000 years ago, and the populations is amongst Bantu speakers, which I have to be honest, that's a large group from Mali and Senegal all the way on down to Cameroon, and maybe even southern Africa to Angola. So honestly, on my paternal side, there is no one tribe that I can claim purely. I would have to honestly say whether it be the Wolof of Senegal, or the Dogon of Mali, the Zulu of South Africa, Angola, whatever it is, that's a general haplogroup, which again, you cannot split the culture and the strong ties of this continent called Africa apart by racial perception and misleading textbooks and such and so forth. Now, that's pretty much it for that.
What I find interesting with the 23andMe site is it offers health information, and you can also interact within that community. Have you been able to connect with anyone who shared the same DNA results with you?
It's actually, yes, I have. It's actually pretty safe. You don't have to worry about what the other person is capable of seeing, whether you give them basic access to your genealogy informations, or you go into it from an advanced point of view. It's still certain things that are locked down and separate from what they can do. They cannot download your raw DNA information. It's just certain things that they can't do, and certain things you will not be able to do. But it's not a hard process. Once you actually receive your DNA, then you're capable of going into the community and posting things and joining groups and doing certain things like that. So be patient, and once you get your results, just have fun, and be open-minded. There's a lot of people out there. You're not going to always find second and first cousins. You have a lot of people who are adopted out there. So be open-minded to not just going to people who have similar last names, but if they have the same haplogroup, or if they have similar genetic traits, or if there's a family story that there's not sure about, them having a connection to something you have a connection to, help them out and be open-minded, because what they can offer you and what you can offer them may further your information about your family tree.
Well, Master Kupi, again, we thank you for stopping by the studio and sharing your information with us. We look forward to having you back in the future, and good luck with your quest in researching your family line. We wish you the best.
Thank you.
I can read the Hebrew, I can see right through you. You want your identity, but you don't want to leave who you are. You